All right, so today we're going to start talking about units and unit rates, and we need to make sure that we are able to convert between different units. And so there are some items up here of interest that are going to give you like 5,280 feet and 1 mile. So they are going to give you some basic conversions that are unit rates. So in 1 mile, in 1 ounce, in 1 kilogram, in 1 mile here as well. So that when you are converting from feet to miles or miles to feet, you can do that, or milliliters to ounces and ounces to milliliters. So down here we have a couple to try. And what we're going to do is when we multiply fractions, remember we can cross-reduce, and we're going to cross-reduce the labels. So if this is days, this has to be days so that they cancel out. Because in this example, I'm going to convert from 746 days to centuries. So I'm going to go from days, and I know how many days are in a year. So there's 365, and you could go and 1/4 days in a year. Now I need to get rid of that year because I want to get to that century. So there are 100 years in 1 century. So what I'm going to do is my labels will cancel out this way, and I'm left with century, and we have centuries there. And then I have my numbers across the top. Now sometimes you're able to cross-reduce numbers, but in this instance I cannot with that 4th in there especially. So I'm going to have 746 times 1 times 1 over 365, and I'm going to write my 1/4 as a decimal, times 100 because it's going to make it really easy for me to do the multiplication. I'm just going to move the decimal point like so. So 746, 36,525ths, which sounds really strange. Now, if you didn't use that quarter, you would have gotten something that looked like that. You could reduce that down then because they're both even numbers, and you could divide by 2. So if you took off that quarter of a day, that would make it so that you could reduce that fraction. And if you think that's odd, 746 days is a little over 2 years. So if I were to reduce that, I would get 373 over 18,250 centuries. So it's definitely not 1 whole century, because a century is 100 years, and this is only 2 years. So it's just a little tiny bit of a century. You could even think of it as like 2/100ths of a century would be a good estimate. If I were to turn this into a decimal then, I would have gotten this decimal. So it's 1/100th. That would have been 2/100ths if we'd looked at it that way. 1/100th of a century. Next one we're going to look at is we're going to convert 56 kilometers to inches. So I'm going to use some of my information from up here to help me, because we're going to we're going from kilometers to inches, so we're going from metric to standard. So in order to do that, I don't have up here kilometers to inches, so this isn't going to be a one-step for me, but I do have kilometers to miles. So there's 1.6 kilometers and 1 mile. So there's 1.6 kilometers in 1 mile. Then I can think about how many feet are in a mile, because I look up here again, I still don't have inches in a mile, but I have feet in a mile. So 5,280 feet, 5,280 feet in 1 mile. Then I can think, oh, in 1 foot, there are 12 inches. Now I'm to my inches. Once again, my kilometers are going to cancel out. My miles are going to cancel out. My feet are going to cancel out. And I'm left with the label that I want. Up top here, I'm going to end up doing 56 times 5,280 times 12. And on the bottom, I have 1 times 1.6 times 1 times 1. Since I have that decimal, you might want to go ahead and use parentheses there so you're not like all those extra dots. So that will give me 1.6 on the bottom. And up at the top, I get 3,548,160. There's a lot of inches in a mile. And if I go ahead and I divide that by the 1.6, I can find out that there's 2,217,600 inches in 56 kilometers. This next one, they're asking me to convert 120 barrels to quarts. So I'm going to start off with the 120 barrels up top. I know that my next one is also going to be, if I can spell it correctly, barrels. So I'm going to look up here, and I can't go from barrels to quarts that I see. I've got barrels to gallons, and I've got 2 barrels to so many gallons. Now I can look at that and go, if there's 73 gallons in 2 barrels, that means that in 1 barrel, I can divide that by 2. So that's 36.5 gallons. So when I come down here, I can do one of the 2 things. I could either put the 2 barrels and the 73 gallons up top, or since I've already gone and done that up top, I can say that there's 36.5 gallons in 1 barrel. Now, my next one is going to be gallons, and I'm trying to get to quarts. So do I have gallons to quarts? I've got quarts to liters. Oh, right here. That in 1 gallon, there are 4 quarts. Now, quarts is what I'm trying to get to. My barrels will cancel out. My gallons will cancel out. So now I'm going to do 120 times 36.5 times 4. And I've got all over top of 1s. If I had left that as 73 over 2, I would eventually have to divide by 2. Since I've already taken care of that, I don't have to do it now. So I get 17,520 quarts in 120 barrels. This next one, they just want me to go quarts to gallons. And if you remember, there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So 37 quarts. So this is going to be a nice one-step equation, one-step conversion for me. So we said there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So I'm going to end up having 37 divided by 4. So there's 9.25 gallons and 37 quarts. on the back of our paper, we have a few more that might seem like something you would actually use, because I can't remember last time I used barrels or had to figure out how many days there were in a part of a century. But I might have to convert minutes and days, like time-wise. I'm going to do something like this more often. So if I had 75 minutes, now I don't know how many minutes there are in a day, but I do know how many minutes there are in an hour, and then I know how many hours there are in a day. So 75 minutes is going to be a very small part of a day. So if there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, and there's 24 hours in 1 day, so I'm going to end up with 75 divided by whatever 60 times 24 is. So 75 divided by 1,440 is 0.5, so 5 hundredths of a day. So 75 minutes is 5 hundredths of a day. The next one we have here is we're going to convert 46 inches to miles. Once again, we're going to have something very tiny because 46 inches is not even 4 feet, and a mile is 5,280 feet. So this is a little tiny part of a mile. So 46 inches. I don't know how many inches there are in a mile, but I know how many inches there are in a foot. And I know how many feet there are in a mile. Now you're like, Mrs. Williams, when we go and cancel out, these foot and feet are not exactly the same thing, but they're close enough. They're kind of the same thing, just in a different tense, so, and numbers. So 46 inches, well, there's 12 inches in 1 foot, and there's 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So we're going to end up with 46 divided by 12 times 5,280, which is 63,360. I still have my 46 on the top. And so when I divide that, and it says round to the 10,000ths place, they weren't kidding because it's 0.000, so there's thousandths, there's 10,000ths. So it's really a tiny part of a mile. Got a couple more down here. I want to see if you can do it. The age in seconds. I'm going to do mine just so you can see, so you can have some fun doing yours. So find your age in seconds. Well, my age is 43 years. And I know how many days there are in a year. And I know how many hours there are in a day. And I know how many minutes there are in an hour. And I know how many seconds there are in a minute. So this one's kind of long. So in 1 year, there's 365 days. And in 1 day, there's 24 hours. And in 1 hour, there's 60 minutes. And in 1 minute, there's 60 seconds. Yours is going to look very similar, only you're going to start with a different age. When I go through and do that math, I'm going to have a 1 on the bottom and a super huge number on the top. So as before, where we were doing problems and we were getting little tiny answers, I have been alive for 1,356,048,000 seconds. How long have you been alive for?